Do you see Biden collapsing at all? I mean, I agree with you that right now the polls say he's the most formidable candidate. He's got 100% name recognition. He seems unthreatening generally to a huge bulk of the American public. Do you see circumstances under which he could crumble? I mean, he was a bad presidential candidate a couple of other times, but now he's got the VP hallmark on his resume.
Well, it's a little bit, you talk in one of the things I saw, a poster of yours, you talk about the facts. And Biden represents the feeling wing of America. So the facts don't matter. I mean, a little bit like AOC. I mean, she represents the hysterically feeling wing of America. And that among their people, facts don't matter. So the fact, people forget the first time Biden collapsed, he ran and he had this wonderful emotional speech about his childhood and growing up in a small town. It turned out it was Neil Kinnock's speech as a labor leader about Wales. Now, a guy who's from Scranton, representing Delaware, describing himself in terms of a Welsh village, this was back when the news media still had some sense of covering fact. I mean, the news media destroyed him. They just said, this is crazy. But one of the failures of my career, I'm watching the Palin-Biden debate, which is available online. People can check the transcript. And Biden says at one point, if you really want to understand the middle class, I want you to come to Katie's restaurant on Saturday morning where I go all the time. Well, in the back of my head, that didn't ring right. So I called a friend in Wilmington and said, when did Katie's close? Well, Katie's closed 13 years before he said that. So I called the McCain campaign, and this tells you a lot about why Republicans lose and why Trump's different than normal Republicans. I called the McCain campaign. I said, put her on an airplane tonight. Fly into Wilmington with the National Press Corps. Go looking for Katie's. And he'll tell you this guy's a doofus. And that's the danger that he would have as president. This is a man so shallow and so lacking in seriousness. You know, Bob Gates, the Secretary of Defense for both Obama and Bush, wrote in his memoir that for 4 decades, Biden has been consistently wrong on every major national security issue. Now, I mean, Gates is sort of a bureaucrat. He's not an ideologue. But that should sober people. Do you really want a guy as president who has been wrong for 4 decades on every major national security issue?
Now, when you talk about, his sort of feelings appeal, it's pretty obvious that basically he's running a 1920 Warren G. Harding back to normalcy campaign. That effectively
Right.
what he's saying is Donald Trump, forget about the policy. Donald Trump is too crazy. He's too out there. He's too volatile. I'm the solid guy. You remember from the Obama administration, and you remember things weren't so bad then. Things are much worse now in terms of sort of the American political sphere. I don't think that rings true, but it seems to be effective in a lot of polls, particularly with suburban women. If you're President Trump, how do you counter that?
Well, I mean, first of all, this is one of the great challenges Trump has because suburban women react negatively to Trump's style. I mean, the very toughness and aggressiveness and risk-taking which makes Trump so popular with blue-collar workers jars suburban women. And that, I mean, he's got to think through to what degree there are 2 ways to become more acceptable. One is to change, which I think is unlikely. The other is to draw an issue contrast so compelling that in the end they decide, for example, that as mothers, they don't want their children growing up in that kind of world. And so I think Trump probably has to go to the second model, which is Nixon in 72 rather than Reagan in 84. But Nixon won the largest popular vote in modern American history. I mean, bigger than FDR, bigger than anybody. He got a bigger popular vote margin. Because in the end, people said, yeah, I can't be for McGovern. I think the challenge that Biden has, and the reason that I think it's a difficulty, I think there are 2 simple language sets. There are winners and there are whiners. Biden represents the whining wing of American politics right now. Trump represents the winning wing. So if you're conservative and you like conservative judges, Trump is the biggest winner in your lifetime. If you like going to work and think it's nice to have a job, Trump is the biggest winner in modern times. I mean, if you're African-American and think the unemployment rate matters or think it's great the wages are going up, Trump is a big winner. So I think, but that relates to a real gap psychologically. The second is, I think, the gap between fact and emotion, which is why I found the slogan you use so fascinating. The reason our arguments don't work on the left is the left gets up in the morning and says, but I feel this way. And you try to give them facts, but you don't understand. In fact, there's an interview that AOC had where the reporter demolished factually, and she finally stopped him and said, look, I'm morally correct. So the fact that all those facts are wrong is irrelevant because it's because you're in two different psychological arenas. And that's part of our challenge. And a lot of the younger voters who have been in left-wing colleges and left-wing high schools have been trained to think only emotionally, and have been trained to believe that facts aren't really relevant.